well, maybe I go at this side. My name is Mathias Brandt. I've been working in Ukraine for a little bit more than 5 years now. I started off supporting 4 cities for the Euro 2012 football championship, and this is also the way how I came to this topic, what I'm talking about today, which is integrated urban development. And at that time it was for us specifically important not to support any kind of UEFA or whatever ambitions, because UEFA generally takes all the money, whereas there is money to earn. It makes it very expensive for the cities to host such big concerts. And in Germany we have made very good use of this World Championship about 6 years before, because we are really using that first of all to make our cities much more attractive, and it was also being used to really heavily promote cities. So things like city marketing and getting into this global competition was a very important issue. And at that time we also said, okay, we actually do not, though we are supporting Euro 2012, we do not care about football at all. But what we would like to care about, that we get better city marketing on the road, and partially we left some traces. I would say generally things got a little bit better, also in terms of tourism. I observe always that really a lot of things got much more professional, the presentations and everything. And on top of this tourism and city marketing, we also care very much about mobility. And in mobility, it was first of all obviously a little bit very practical things, like how to organize parking, how to organize the traffic during match days and everything, so that everything would run very smoothly. But we also concentrated, for example, on creating a better information system for tourists. Some of those indicators that you see here in the streets with those maps, that is remaining. Unfortunately, a little bit of vandalism has made them dirty. But we managed to leave some traces behind. And I really think altogether this was a very big success. But having done that, we obviously saw that there is a big need for transferring also experience from our cities to Ukrainian cities, because many things and many problems are exactly the same, no matter whether you work in a German university in a German city, or whether you work in a Ukrainian city. The answers and also the means to answer and address problems are though very different. If you look here at this slideshow that I put together, I just put that as a kind of, let's say, if you are bored with what I'm saying, you may be entertained by some of the pictures. But these pictures also talk in a way more than I can talk about what is good in cities and what is not so good in cities. And I just leave that a little bit as a background, so just to take that as a kind of decoration of my speech. But nonetheless, they are obviously very much connected, and I will come back to that. So, having said that, after 4 years, we had the Maidan revolution, and we also had a shift in the government policy. Not just the government, I also believe we had a shift in government policy. And the German government, together with the Ukrainian government, said we should now go and get much more support for introducing local self-government. Local self-government is, in my opinion, really the core and the key to democracy. Without real local self-government, I don't think there will be a really resilient and stable and strong democracy. So in the cities, a democratic culture in many ways starts, and it was very important, it is very important for the Swiss and the German government to provide support to this reform. When I stand here in front of you 9 months after I started, I would say there is a little bit of a delay in putting this reform really to practice. And I also say, in my opinion, from my observation, there is maybe also in the national government a lot of goodwill, a lot of good political will, but at the same time there are basically no experts who can really do this job and are qualified enough to do this job. I have the information that, for example, there are 8 new jobs in the Ministry for Regional Development open, which they cannot find people because of poor salaries, mostly. That's at least what I was told. But you see, there is basically a big lack of people and resources and knowledge on how to do this reform on local self-government. But we are trying to support them, but this is not our, let's say, our first goal. Our first goal is actually that we take care about the development of cities. And here we have selected 4 medium-sized cities in Ukraine. The first one is Diminskiy. I don't need to tell you much about the city, you know it. It's certainly one of the most very attractive cities in Europe and most attractive cities in Ukraine anyhow. It is Zhytomyr, it is Vinica, and it is Poltava. I personally must say, I did not visit these cities before, but after getting them to know a little bit better, I think it's really wonderful cities with a really big potential for developing into something very, very positive, because they have all what it takes. And we said also it should not be too big cities, so we wanted to have cities between 260 and 300,000 people. And this is now our 4 cities. So what are we doing? It is really some, we are paving the roads in many respects. I'll give you an example. I was yesterday together with my colleagues in Vinica, and in Vinica we were discussing certain aspects, and among others we were discussing about the cadastre. So if you want to do city development and you don't even know where are borders, you don't have a cadastre, the cadastre data are not available for those that have to make city planning. They basically work also with OpenStreetMap, that is Google or whatever it is, what you can get Google Streets. It is really very difficult to make reliable planning. So this is just even in the city that these data are not provided, for example, by some communal enterprises who do have the data and they belong to the city, but they still don't give those who make the plans, the city architects, they don't give them the data. And it is a huge, huge work actually to just enter those data to have a good and proper basement for all what we have to do. When I say with my title Strong City, Strong Ukraine, it also has a little bit of an historical background, because in Germany it was also after Napoleonic War and before our, let's say, first unification in our history. We also had some reformers who started to make really a reform by introducing local self-government about 250 years ago. And many people say that was also the key to success, that Germany basically took off so well in terms of at least industrial development and it became actually a strong economic nation. So that's about 200 years back, but I also believe if we all together succeed in making this reform happen, really giving decision-making power down to the people on the city level, this will tremendously boost the development of the cities. And the cities themselves will be pulling engines for the rest of the economy. So I believe what we are doing has really, and that's why I choose this title, Strong City, Strong Ukraine, that it will have in many aspects very, very positive impacts. That is in terms of democratic culture, in terms of participation of power, in terms also of economic development, and also in terms of social development, and hopefully also to some extent in terms of environmental development. You all, I think you're all more or less interested in this development, so I guess you know that this famous urbanization is actually going with a rapid speed. Far more than half of the population of the world live in cities, and there is no tendency observable that this will change. Cities grow quick, but the problems grow even quicker. And even, let's say, with very sophisticated plans, like we try to apply them here, it will be very difficult to match those challenges. If you see, for example, how quick Kyiv grows, and the space where people live, and nobody actually really cares about how people can get transport from A to B, you can see already how many problems will be accumulated, and without, let's say, more intelligent plans for city development, this will actually lead to the next catastrophes. And catastrophe, I mean basically that everything is jammed, that nobody can move. You see in some of my pictures here already how it looks in some of the Asian streets, Asian cities who grow even quicker. I've been working in Jakarta, for example, and it's for me a nightmare to live in such a city, or in Beijing. You cannot breathe, you can really not breathe, and you cannot move. They don't even have an effective or good transport system, public transport system, so you're basically blocked. When you have a meeting somewhere in Beijing, even if it's just, let's say, 10 kilometers away, you must count sometimes half a day just to meet somebody for an hour if you want to meet him. So it also costs a lot of economic damage by wasting time if you don't have an intelligent city planning. We have, for example, in Freiburg. Freiburg is a little city in the southwest of Germany, close to the French border. They have developed, and they are not the only ones who do it, a new district for people, mixed living, of where they say already from the planning, this new district will have workspaces and spaces for living at the same time. So already by planning, they try to take care that a certain percentage of people who live there also work there. This specifically applies to people who have a freelance job or who are self-employed. It is very important that you mix that, so that their first answer is, the best answer, for example, to traffic is not to have traffic at all. So you just walk, basically. In the best case, from your sleeping room to your working room, and then you don't create much trouble or environmental pollution or whatsoever. So that's, let's say, the ideal world. And secondly, they also say, okay, before we build a house or whatever, we want to have a tram line. So they really put down the tram line, and here they say every building that is constructed in this area, every building should be able, or every person who lives in the building should be able to reach with not more than 500 meter a tram station. So they have already a plan that they say, okay, always we must make sure that it is very reliable, and you do not have to walk more than 500 meters, because then people really use that. It is very practical, and they think not for using their car. Okay, these are ways on how they react basically to this question of traffic. In other areas, for example, they try to open the inner city only for local producers. So there you see, for example, because they have also an integrated philosophy, that they say we want producers from our neighborhood. Producers means potatoes, vegetables, or whatever you have, fresh stuff, to be able to sell in our city, so that we have less transport for whatever food we have, and we have at the same time even a kind of promotion of small producers that are in the neighborhood of our city. So they promote actually economic growth, they promote in a way healthy food because it's fresh food, and they promote obviously that not too much transport is done, because in Germany, but I think it's the same, in some supermarkets in Hamburg you can buy milk from Munich, but in Hamburg they have enough cows to really to fill all Hamburg with milk. But nonetheless, for some reasons there is this distribution, but there is traffic created without any sense. So these are approaches and experiences, and I just give you these couple of examples that we are also trying to transfer here. So what are we doing actually in those 4 cities? First of all, it is very important to us that we try to change a little bit the way of thinking. When we go through Kyiv, and we've just been talking about this parking lot close to European Ploshad, we can see that this is a city basically where cars are the boss. I don't need to tell you this famous example that I had when I was walking and not really being attentive on Kreshatik on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden a car was swooping, and I had to give way even on my pedestrian walk, and they have 6 lanes there, and he even thinks he has priority on my pedestrian walk. But that's just an example. I work in Gurkovo Street, it's now Antonovica. There also, you see everywhere, even on the pedestrian crossing, they park on the sideway, and if you have to move there with whatever trolley, or even just as a normal walker, it is really always, quite often not easy to walk, because cars are always taking and consuming a lot of space. So what we try to do, basically to reverse this thinking. We had also in Germany, in the 60s or after the war specifically, new city planners, they found Germany very interesting because Germany was destroyed. So city planners had a lot of space to build big roads. And this was, for example, they say, okay, now we have enough space to build new cities with large roads, which are big enough to digest all the traffic so that people can travel with the car wherever they want. But all this planning proved to be very soon, and I think it started already in the 70s and became then very evident in the 80s, that all this basically destroys all the environment, and it also makes the cities more and more not livable. Again, if I refer to some of those pictures, you can see how little the human being all of a sudden gets when you put cars and big roads up front. Because a big road with, I don't know, 6 lanes is like separating a complete community. You have to walk sometimes 500 meters just to be able to cross to the other sea. So it's like a stream, but not like a stream of water, but it's something that divides people and not connects people. It makes a lot of noise, and so on and so forth. And we say, okay, this we don't want to have anymore as a priority. We say, in the medium and in the middle of all thinking, of all what we do in city planning, city development, must be the human being. So what is good and what serves the needs of a human being is good for the city. And that has, when you really take that serious, it has a lot of impact. And it creates obviously also a lot of discussions, specifically the fight between car drivers and those who think we should have, yeah, this is for me a typical example. It's actually from here, and you cannot even walk there, not to talk that you can cross. I think you know where it is, this little pass. And that's a typical thing. They build a new road and wouldn't even think about a pedestrian that they have to cross this street. So when you're a little bit more a heavy man and you meet another one, same heavy, it's really difficult to come across. So just you hope just meeting slim people. This is, by the way, also from London, where they tried Norman Foster. He made a kind of cycling bridge. So these are just some impressions that I'm sure you can read what it is. So what we try really to do is there to put the human being in the center of living. That has big impacts on the design of places. It has big impacts on the design of roads. It has big impacts on the design of houses. Because when we look at houses, and they are usually more than, let's say, 6 or 7 stories high, they usually already exceed the human dimension. The human dimension is, among many city planners, something where I still can see you or recognize you. Are you lady or are you man? Or that I can at least shout to you. And that's usually a distance of something like 100 meters. So everything should basically be considered a little bit under this dimension, that you can somehow recognize people in this dimension, in this space of 100 meters. That's why many people say we should never build buildings higher than 6 or 7 floors. Because that is always this taking the human dimension, how far you can see, how far you can shout. That's a little bit of a measure. But when we look at our streets, this is, for example, from my hometown, one of those areas which really used to look very nice. This is now dreadful. I think it's the worst place in Europe. But this one is, no, that was not. It will later. It will come when you see it was 100 years before, when there were no cars yet, and you see the difference. And maybe it comes now. You just see the difference. Okay, it doesn't come now. In any case, this is an important message that I want to say. What we want to do different from what is being done so far. And in cities like Kyiv, we may also come with our project and support the development of Podil. This is at least planned. It is not yet decided, but we very much hope that either next year or latest a year later, we can also start our work for this district of Podil, which has a lot of potential. And having said that, for us it is really that the human being is in the center of all what we are doing. So, in those 4 cities that I mentioned, we have basically 3 major components what we want to do. First of all, we want to do and create an integrated open development concept. What's the difference between such a concept and what is now? Right now, the city plan, general plan or generalplan or how it is called, is actually a very, very strict plan which describes exactly what you have to do where, what kind of building you have to do where, and what you should not do at a certain place. If you have a certain area, it even describes there should be a bank, and if you see there is no need for a bank, you still have to have a permission, for example, to build a shop, because people, let's say they want to have a shop there and there is somebody who wants to build a shop there. So you need permission. And it's obviously also a big source. The more permissions you need everywhere, the more opportunities for corruption are there. So also to create always barriers where you need to have a permission for that and for that. People who have money have always a possibility to buy all the permissions they need, and that happens also. So what we are trying to do is, next to putting people in the center, what I was saying, is that we make this more as a general plan that can be handled very flexible. Obviously, we will also give some definitions of where should be living, where should be working, where should be the main axis for traffic and for transport. We also will say what are the major rules, how high and how tall buildings are. I mean, that are all elements that are obviously also now in the general plan. But it gives basically the communities and the neighborhoods much more opportunity to design their places if there is something new, if there is a new building, for example, to participate in that. And the idea of participation is, for us, really extremely important. Most of those pictures that you see here, they come, as you see here, from Poltava. This is an event that we organized in Chernivtsi, in Poltava, in Zhytomyr, and later it will also come Vinica, where we actually ask people to get involved and give their ideas how the city should develop in the future. So we're trying here to work with school classes, we're trying to work with kindergartens, but also with elder people, basically with all kind of target groups, with the business, with the economy. We really try to bring their ideas, to give them a stage where they can come up with the ideas. So we are now at this stage of collecting ideas. We are at the stage that we make a complete inventory of what kind of plans are there, because we have a lot of plans for energy, for example, for transport, for educational services. We look now in all 4 cities what is there. And then based on this evaluation, we will also look, and that's part of this, such an integrated development concept, and also is a difference to the general plan that we have now, that we say, where are the strengths, where are potential to develop really a city? So meaning we are combining a little bit the strategic development aspects with the spatial aspect. So we really look, for example, in Poltava now we have 8 or 9 fields. It's from working and living, environment, it's leisure, it's green spaces, it's energy. So we look at all those spheres, what problems do we have and what possibilities do we have. And so based on that we try then to develop a kind of policy for each of those chapters and turn it also into a kind of spatial concept, so that you can see in maps how it is actually, how the city should develop. And we want to make this very transparent, meaning we have a group of local experts from all those 4 cities, and we bring them together with some experts from Germany, who give examples on how we are doing it in Germany. But we are not we are not doing it ourselves. So basically we have also in each of those cities a so-called interdisciplinary working group, meaning that the heads of the most important departments, plus very active NGOs, active means in the area of city development, that they sit together on the table and that we discuss with them all what is being brought up by citizens, that we see how we can blend that into such a planning process. And then, after we have done, let's say, initial plans, we again will go out to the public. We present it. We are going actually to build or refurbish in all 4 cities, small citizen information centers, a little bit about this size, a little bit smaller, but where we can have, for example, group meetings like we are having this one today, and people can actually inform themselves. We will display all maps so that people can see what is going to happen in my neighborhood. And they can see, I don't like that, and I can bring up. Obviously, This will be a big discussion, and there will also be a lot of conflicts. So it is also, and that's what I meant when I started to say it's a little bit about democratic culture, because conflicts are actually normal. When we are sitting together, and even if we're very peaceful people here, and we would need to do something, I'm sure we would enter into very soon into arguments what is the best way to do it. So our culture and our civilization advantage would be that, or how to say it, our our status of civilization allows us that we see, okay, we must get to compromises, we must live together, and so the art of solving conflicts is obviously also very important. But the philosophy that we are having here, that's why I said the human person in the middle, is that we give in such rooms and in such spaces all people the possibility at least to come up with good ideas. That does not mean that all ideas are possible to take over, that is not possible, but nonetheless they are informed and they can fight for the idea and they have somebody to listen. So this is what we do in this component. One, as I call it, we make this plan, and this plan is basically usually a book. I didn't bring one now I could bring one from Germany, but it is, let's say, it wouldn't tell you very much. It is a book, sometimes 50, 100, 200 pages depending. And it basically has a couple of chapters where it says what's the vision of a city, where does the city develop into, and then it goes into those 10, can be 8, 10, 12 chapters where it says what is the most important lines, how a city and where it should develop to. And this is accompanied then by a set of maps, topical maps, that basically lay out what is now, what is the situation now, and how should it be in the future. And in the future means usually that we are looking and thinking of a planning horizon of something like 15 years. Because many projects that are defined in such a plan, and usually it's, I don't know what, about 20 to 40 projects that are defined, some of them very expensive, some of them less expensive, it takes a long time to develop them. What we also try to do, and this is also something we discussed, for example, yesterday in Vinica, that we use public funds. Lviv, for example, does that already now. That we use public funds to stimulate private investments, so that we would say, for example, if somebody of you says we in our neighborhood would like to redesign our courtyard, just to make it into a very nice place where wine grows, where it's quiet and peaceful and a lot of green and the birds sing. Let's say you have such a desire and maybe other people have as well. We say, okay, if everybody of us brings in, I don't know what, 20,000 or 30,000 hryvnia, and the city brings up the same money, so you would have enough money really to do it. This would also, again, I'm talking to livable cities, that neighborhoods get stronger, contacts between people who sometimes live for a life next to each other but do not know each other, that they work together, so that social communities really get strengthened. And these are such ideas, and such a general plan, not a general plan, such an integrated concept also would provide guidance for that. So this is what we are doing, and what is very important to us also, because we expect that the cities as they are now are maybe not really prepared for change. So many people have a good will, but there is not the culture of really working in a different style as cities. Some individuals may be eager and like to do it, but then again, as a system it doesn't work, it is not encouraged. Decision making is not encouraged, so people do not really react to change. So we want also to establish a kind of training program for those 4 cities, and it will be quite a complex training program. I'm hoping that we can reach in the next 2 years, our project will finish by the end of 2018, at least per city about 500 to 1,000 training days, meaning that hopefully we will have everybody trained in a certain way, and these are subjects like better communication and cooperation, so soft skills. It will also be things like conflict solving, better presentation, and also an attempt to basically train people that they get this idea of a service-minded city. Because the city and the map and the plan is nothing if we do not also have an administration that is able to follow the guidelines and principles that are provided by such a concept, and also start to change their thinking in a way that cities and city servants are actually there to serve people, and not the people there to serve the administration, which is still quite often the perception. In Germany we had very similar change, and I should say there are still some cities, for example like Berlin, there is nobody here from Berlin, so I can say that, who have a very there is one. But he may even agree with me. They have one of the poorest quality in service providing from all over Germany. In my city, for example, Köln, we really have a very good culture and a very good quality of service providing. You go there, you can make online a date with someone, and then you go there 5 minutes later, you're out and everything is done. It's really very comfortable, and people are really friendly, smiling to you and say, how are you? So it's just like it should be, but that's also something that changed. So I'm not saying that all of that will happen in just 3 years, but at least that is our vision, how we want to address these things in those 4 cities. We have support from the mayor, and so if we encounter problems, we will always go back to this support that he has provided to us, because we said, you as a mayor, you must give your political weight for this change, because change will only happen if people change. Very easy to say, but still, when we all think about, and everybody of us who was in changing environments, I'm working for GIZ, we also have something we call Bauhaus. It's a big change progress. It creates, first of all, a lot of turmoils and things that always worked well before don't work anymore, and the new things don't work yet. So it is not always very pleasant to work under a system where change is going to happen. So enabling people building capacities is one thing, and getting this plan done is the second thing. So that is component 1. Component 2 is basically about traffic. We are a project that is financed by the Germans and also by the Swiss government, and the Swiss government is specifically interested that they will only provide financing, for example, for public transport, if there is a coherent and proper planning first. So when I say we make this holistic, integrated plan by looking into all functions of the city, from education, environment, what I mentioned, sport, leisure, economy, etc. We take from one of those sectors, I call them sectors, we take one sector, which is the sector of mobility, and there we must make again a plan to see how we can actually turn our integrated plan into a plan that is also compatible with mobility. So the example that I gave from Freiburg would be a typical example. First plan the traffic potential and then start building. So by doing this, it forces certainly to improve the quality of traffic, punctuality, service, etc. pp. But they want us to make such a plan, and also to design a project. In Vinica it will be a project for tramways, for trams, Straßenbahn. And in the other cities we do not yet know. But the idea is that we build on those planning, coming from this holistic plan, sectoral plan, also plan a project ready to be implemented based on this cascade of planning. So that is what the Swiss specifically do, and on top of that we are doing, but only to a minor issue, we have about 50,000 euro that we want to invest into demonstration project, where we want to show that all what I am telling you now here, participation, consistency with the overall plan, that is really being respected throughout the whole process. So with such a demonstration project, we also want to make something happen. But that can be a public space somewhere, that can be a smaller project, but it cannot be the bigger projects which usually cost millions of euro, at least in infrastructure. So that is component 2, this infrastructure and traffic, and component 3, that is also one of the reasons why I'm here. We are starting now with Canaction and some other partners. We are starting a training program for 25 experts in modern urban planning. 17 from those 25 come from our cities. So this is already part of what I said, the training program, that we want these specialists who are now quite often city architects, city planners. By the way, there is not something like city planning that you can really study at the university, or very little of it. I mean, we had to looked a little bit into the curricula, and there was not that much visible. So what we want to do is really to see, okay, that we open the eyes of people, of architects, what kind of methods, what kind of instruments and what kind of approaches are there on the market that they can learn and hopefully also apply. So it's the first time that we have this mix of young people who have basically shown that they have some experience in designing, implementing projects, and at the same time we have also experienced guys that have to do this work by now, and we very much hope through such a mix of young thinking people and maybe some old but still open people, we can really also generate already much more understanding of what we are talking when we're talking about modern urban planning. We are doing, by the way, that's also why I'm happy to have two of my colleagues in the backyard sitting. We are actually having right now a call for proposals also for best practice in integrated sustainable urban planning. Maybe you just get up and describe a little bit what you say. You can do that, I think, in Ukrainian. I know what it is all about. But I just said I take the opportunity also to give my colleagues here a little bit the floor, if you do not mind. It's, yeah, okay?
But we keep it short. We make projects...
Maybe you can talk directly in Ukrainian or not?
Окей, у нас зараз проходить конкурс Левської премії для вже оцінених життя фактично проєктів.
Maybe come in front, then we can see you better. Otherwise they get twisted heads. Тетяна.
У нас є конкурс Левської премії, загальний фонд конкурсу становить 25 тисяч євро. І фактично це конкурс вже для втілених проєктів, які відповідають цим характеристикам, про які фактично пан Брандт розказував. І тому запрошуємо вас брати участь в цьому конкурсі, ми можемо роздати вам додаткові матеріали, кому цікаво. Супер! Можливо, якщо у вас додаткові питання якісь є, можете зараз запитати.
Maybe you just circulate it, and if somebody still wants to have it, you will be here, I mean, a little bit more, and we can...
Можете також залишити свої контакти, кому не вистачить.
Okay, but this is a part, let's say, of where we want to stimulate this thinking of integrated urban development. By the way, this prize is called Leipzig Prize, not just because it's a nice and historic city in Germany, but moreover, there is something like a European charter for the sustainable European city. And this is a kind of document of about 10 pages that sets out quality indicators and policy advice how a city should develop. And this European Charter is quite often also referred to as Leipzig Charter, and that's why we call it the Leipzig Prize, because it sets clear priorities. You can even find, when you just go Leipzig Charter, you'll find in the internet a lot of information is translated in many languages. You find some orientation and more detailed what I was talking about today. So that provides a lot of guidelines, it provides orientation, and we as a project, together also with the Ministry of Regional Development, we actually want to raise awareness about it, but we also want to tell them, okay, we have to follow these requirements that are laid out in this Leipzig Charta, and it's quite an ambitious issue about specifically environmental things, the idea of a climate-friendly city, CO2 neutrality is very important. The idea of barrier-free is very important. Social inclusion, specifically to build cities also where people with disadvantages, obviously also disabled people, have equal rights. And in many of our cities, Paris, London or others, it is also a big problem that sometimes socially weak people are in certain districts, and it creates violence. I'm sure you have heard about many of the outbreaks of violence in Paris, specifically among young people, and obviously city planners and designers who have quite often created those ghettos, which are somewhere in the suburbs. They obviously also see a responsibility to make future cities in a way that they do not give reason for such violence that is quite often happening, crime and everything. So that is very important issues. I said this is component 3, like Leipzig Charta, but others where we try to share all our information with others, where we do this education that we start now with Connections, but where we also want to do something that is not very sexy stuff, but we still have to do it, and we try to identify all problems. I mentioned, for example, cadastre. So we're looking now, for example, into the idea how we can actually establish GIS-based data systems. With GIS-based data systems, we specifically want now to include all cadastre data, meaning where are the borders, who owns what kind of piece land. But on top of that, later there will be many more layers. And this is also a part of an open data policy that is applied very much by the European Union, so that all these data are basically also available to all citizens, which will create a lot of transparency and much more information about the status of a community and of a city. So these three components in 4 cities, that is basically what we are doing here with the philosophy to put a human being into the center of all what we are doing. To do that in the 4 cities, provide at the same time advice, and that's what I mean, how the administrative framework and how the legal framework must be changed to allow this integrated urban concept and urban planning as we would like to have it. Right now it's said that there are 33 laws and regulations under preparation in the ministry. And basically since 2015, the beginning, there is no major law has changed. So basically we're still following a concept of city development that is very much the old Soviet system. It's very much top down. Everything is decided on the central, or most things are decided on the national level. And that is really something that we want to radically change. And that means by radically changing, really to give the decision-making power to the municipalities. There are specifically financially already some things have improved. There is progress. We think there should be quicker progress. And the quicker we have the process and also qualify people at the city level, the more successful we will be. And as said, we are limited to those 4 cities. Maybe Kyiv, Bodil will join our family in 1 year or 2 years. But we are very open to share everything, what we know, what we do with every city in Ukraine and not just Ukraine. Because we also will create, most probably together with Connections, a kind of online library where we make all things that we are developing, all regulations, all examples, how city advertising is done, how greenkeeping should be done in the city, and so on and so forth. There are many things. We all want to share them, so they will be available mostly in Ukrainian language, in English language, and some of them also in German language. And that is also something that we are doing. So share everything that we do with as many people as possible. That is what we hope we can contribute to make strong cities, and hopefully following this logic also a strong Ukraine. Thank you.